Welcome back to the Church of Doom, brothers and sisters. Hope everybody's having a good Wednesday. Hump day. Do people still say that? I don't think so, actually. But I'm excited for today. It's gonna be a pretty chill one. We've been doing so much prepping, so much brainstorming, so much deep diving into Daggerheart, which I'm still in love with. Oh, speaking of which, look what showed up in the mail today. My Daggerheart official hardcover rulebook. And just from like flipping it open the very first time, I was like, oh god, flipping through this is so much better than scrolling through a PDF. Even the art I like appreciate more with it being on the page, and the monster spreads, being able to see it. Oh, it's so cool. I'm so excited, guys. And I'm thinking I've had some Sunday D&D one-shots that I've been sort of trying to plug and fill that have just not gotten a lot of attention, which is fine. It is what it is, right? But I am thinking maybe I will switch some of those Sunday games over to some Daggerheart one-shots or some Daggerheart campaigns, because I really, really want to get playing this, and I don't know if I can wait for my other current 5e campaigns to finish up. But I'm excited about that, and I am very excited to today jump into our topic. What makes a great dungeon master? This was a Reddit post I saw go up. I saw it yesterday. It's been up for 2 days. It's got 61 comments, 93 upvotes, so it's a fairly popular post in the D&D thread, but it was a topic that I feel like I was quick to sort of be like, well, man, I kind of know. Like, I've been doing this long enough. I know what makes a great dungeon master. But then I thought, you know what? I kind of am wanting to revisit the core principles of the hobby a bit. I've actually been re-listening to Runehammer's RPG Mainframe podcast from episode 1, just kind of giving that a re-listen to, because I feel like it's a great source of inspiration and just like grounding in the hobby to go back to. So if you haven't listened to the podcast, it's on Spotify. It's all free. There's like 70 something episodes. It's called the RPG Mainframe. Go listen to that. But that's sort of where my mindset is right now, especially as I am looking to get more and more into Daggerheart, is what are areas of my D&D hobby that I've sort of fallen into like ruts or like what's the good word for it? Just like stuck in one way of thinking about things. A good example of this is the video I put up yesterday, kind of across all my socials, about initiative order, because I bet Marc's here, and if he's not, shout out to my boy Marc, because I was talking to him on our creative confessional a day or so ago, and he put it a really interesting way. He said Daggerheart is a game about listening to contribute. You are always needing to be listening. You can't just like check out. If you're not listening, if you're not actively engaged in what's happening at the table, you're going to miss out on opportunities to do things. Whereas D&D is a hobby that is more about waiting until it's your turn to then react to things. Now, I don't necessarily think one is better than the other. I would say I probably just personally, in how I try and run my D&D sessions, I might lean a little more towards Daggerheart's system, or that mindset of, hey, everybody should be contributing. But at the same time, I have played in like initiative order for a long time. I'm seeing a bunch of hearts getting dropped. I appreciate that. Hell yeah. But what was I saying? What the hell was I saying? Oh, so like I've played in initiative order for a long time, mostly to try and make sure the spotlight gets shared. But I would love to do more of the free-form play that Daggerheart offers. And I'm saying all of this because when I posted this video, I got kind of comments in either swing in two different ways. Either there were people who were like, yep, I'm the same way. I would love for my players to be more vocal. I would love more excitement at the table. And then I had other people that were kind of like, meh. Not if you don't play an initiative order, then people are just gonna like hog the spotlight, and they're gonna take all the fun away, and they're gonna just people can't handle it. People can't do it. And I just was like, sure, there are people out there that would cause that sort of problem, of course. But is that like how? I don't think that's the assumption I want to go into an RPG session with, of like, oh boy, okay, like I'm gonna have a bunch of people trying to hog the spotlight. I have to keep them in these really strict initiative orders, this box, so that it all goes well. I just was questioning my own assumptions about that, and I noticed that seems to be people in the hobby who are in a similar position as me, is just have these like really strict mindsets. So that's why we're doing this. That's why we're talking about what makes a great dungeon master, and we're kind of going back to the basics, right? So, with that said, let's do two things. First one, let's crack our orange cream Coca-Cola Zero. Cheers, brothers and sisters. And let's see who's hanging out with us in chat. I see quite a few names in there. Hell yeah. We've got, what's up, Doman? Doman Hebrar, hello, brother. Alex Wants Beans, good morning. Love to see some members in the chat with Doman and Alex. Northwoods, criminally underviewed D&D channel. Hey, I appreciate that, Northwoods. What did you say at the bottom? My brother, your Doom inspires more creativity with prep than any other content out there. Hey, you know what? I'm going to throw some hearts in the chat for you right there as well. I appreciate that, Northwoods. I don't want to, I wouldn't necessarily be like, yo, I'm so underappreciated. But what I will say about that is I do notice seems to be a lack of enthusiasm in consuming RPG content. Is such a phrase, but like I just noticed that like when I put ideas out there, or when I try to kind of go online and see what people's vibe is about the hobby, it's down here. It seems to be way down here. And I certainly am trying to be someone who brings it up to here again. I like, as I was reading through Daggerheart, and by the way, this is just an official Daggerheart channel at this point, right? But when I was reading this, I felt the same level of excitement that I remember feeling back in 2013, 2012, something like that, when I was first reading The Lost Minds of Phandelver starter box, when I was first watching Matt Colville, when I was first watching Critical Role, like all of those sorts of like, ooh, like this is cool, this is fun. It was kind of coming back to me. And I would love to get more people sort of in that same mindset as me. So I appreciate that, Northwoods. I don't know if I'm necessarily underviewed, although my views might say otherwise, but I certainly want to be someone who doesn't worry so much about the views and worries more so about like just what's the general excitement level I'm kind of bringing, right? Hey, Mother Doom, my sweetest baby. Mother Doom's in the chat. Much love. What's up, Kenneth? Kenneth, you gotta respond to my GD Discord message, dude. I messaged you about your character for our Sunday game. Get back to me. Or we might change it to Daggerheart. I have no idea. Kyle Campy. Oh, we got more members. Hell yeah, Kyle. What's going on? And Doman said, you need to play with with grown-ups or vets that know how to share the spotlight. Huh. It would be hard for kids or beginners. I see, but Doman, I'm going to challenge you on that. Because I got a response, one of the comments to my video where I was talking about different initiative styles, was someone was like, well, I play, my table is very mature. It's all mature adults. And we're so mature. Which was funny because like that same comment, they were saying like, we play in strict initiative order. And I was like, what? Like if they're all so mature adults, such mature adults, do you need the initiative order? So like, it seems to be this thought that, like, people, when they start talking at the table, or if you've got someone who's, like, excited and saying a lot of things, then, like, they're gonna just ruin the fun for everybody. Or they'll, like, dominate the conversation. And that certainly can happen. I'm not ignorant to the fact that there are obnoxious players out there who are just gonna, me, I'm gonna do everything. I get that. But at the same time, what I'm sort of realizing about initiative order is that it assumes everybody has an equal amount of things they want to say and share. And that's just not the case with people. Like when I'm at the table, certainly love to kind of put out my one-liners or share my thoughts or make some, not like quippy, but like when one character says something, I like to respond to what they said in character. I think it's fun. I also like to propose plans. And I play with players, and I run games for players who aren't that way. They're sort of like, hey, like whatever, I'll do some role play, but whatever the group decides we're gonna do, I'll be there to help, but I'm not gonna be like the dominant voice. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It does seem like there's this mindset right now of everybody at the table has to be an equal contributing, fantastic role player. And no one can kind of there cannot be any variety in that. And I think that's a little, I don't like that. I just don't like it. I disagree with it. And so my challenge to you, Doman, is if you were to play with a group of kids or younger players, sure, you're going to have more of the, just the high energy of youths, of course. But as the Dungeon Master, I think it is your responsibility and part of the fun to kind of guide / coach these people. Help them see what this hobby is about, right? When someone shows up to the table for the first time and they're 14 or whatever, and they're all over the place, they're just excited. 9 times out of 10, they're just excited, and they're not trying to be an obnoxious table hog. You, being the adult who has played for longer, you know what the game's about, get to show them like, hey, love the enthusiasm, but let's sort of work on how maybe like, can you see how sometimes when you talk over somebody or when you interrupt them, that kind of messes with the flow and it's a little rude, right? Like, that's, I think, part of being a game master. Getting back to our topic, what makes a great dungeon master? It is a willingness to coach. It is a willingness to want to see people become better communicators, better, and as part of that, better role players, more confident in themselves. Excuse me, whew, that orange cream is bubbly. So with that said, Samael gives us a good transition. By the way, Samael, welcome. Yeah, sorry, I'm late, brothers and sisters. What did I miss? You haven't missed much, besides the fact that I have been slowly transitioning us into our topic here. What makes a great dungeon master? So let's read this post, right? Hey, I'm pretty new to the whole TTRPG scene, but I've been really enjoying it, and I'm starting to study and prepare to become a DM myself someday. Good for you. This is from Lord SRM. Even as a player, just sitting at different tables has already shown me a lot. I catch myself thinking things like, oh, I'd totally do that differently, or yeah, I'd definitely use that idea if I were the DM. So now I'm curious. What do you think makes a good dungeon master? What kind of attitude or approach really makes a difference? Are there things a DM should absolutely do or never do? Would love to hear what you all think. Well, let's hear what you all think. Hey, what's up, the Hermit the Tower? Good to see you in the chat. Yeah, what do you guys think makes a good DM? What kind of attitude or approach really makes a difference? Are there things a DM should absolutely do or never do? As you guys kind of share your thoughts in the chat here, let's scroll down and see what some of the other people have said. Do we want to go by best, or should we go... What's kind of the... Well, we'll start with best, and then maybe we'll reverse it. Oh my god. That looks terrifying. Bring her back. What a scary... Oh god, that looks like... When I envision the children that, like, a hag would have as her... Like, the ones she's kidnapped and they're her little minions. That's what I imagine they'd look like. Bloodshot eyes. Super terrifying and creepy. Ugh. Anyways. Also looks like her hair is so short the hag's like, cut it off. Ugh. Terrifying. Alright, so this person said, what makes a great dungeon master is confidence, flexibility, and mastery over the most basic level of the rules. Ooh. You had me in the first half. Confidence, completely agree. I think you can dungeon master without confidence, just like you can play without confidence, but you will not have as much fun, and I think the table will suffer because of it. If you actually, you know what, I had my own little D4 list that I put together of my GM tips, and the fourth one is one that I got from Runehammer, from listening to his podcast, the RPG Mainframe, but he's always said the dungeon master or the game master needs to be the dorkiest, most enthusiastic person at the table, and I could not agree more. And I always try and do that when I show up at the table. I am so willing to make a fool of myself with a voice or a funny action or trying to go way over the top with my descriptions to make things sound fantastical. Fantastical? I don't think that's a word. But that's what I think confidence at the table looks like. The other players, especially newer ones, are going to show up and be like, I don't want to look weird. I don't want to be a weirdo. And the dungeon master has to say, don't worry about it. I'm the weirdo. You be whatever you want. Be as weird as you want, because ain't nobody going to be weirder than me. That's what I think makes a good dungeon master. I also agree with the flexibility part. I think this kind of goes to that rigidness that I was mentioning in the video of like initiative or no initiative. So much rigidness. And I'm guilty of this too. I don't mean to be like sitting on my high horse like, I can't believe these people who only play in initiative order. I still play in initiative order for a lot when I'm playing D&D. But I do think I have a lot of flexibility in my dungeon master style. I feel like every week I show up to my sessions, I'm always trying something different. I'm changing the way I do my maps. I'm changing the way I do my minis. I change the way I do my prep. And that carries into the session too, where when players are wanting to do different things, I'm flexible with them. I make it happen. I make it work. So I like that. This last part, though, mastery over the most basic level of the... Oh, you know what? Actually, now that I'm reading this again, I think I do agree. Mastery over the most basic level of the rules. They're not saying mastery over... They're not saying you have to be such a master you know everything from the most basic rule to the most, like, nuanced niche rule. All they're saying is you need to know the basic rules. Okay, I would, of course, agree with that. If you just show up and you've never done it before... Well, let's make a distinction. Do you need to have mastery of the rules to Dungeon Master? No. If you wait until you feel like you have mastered the rules, you will never start Dungeon Mastering. But if you want to be a great Dungeon Master, then yes, I do think you need to have that mastery over the basic level of rules. Now, what is considered basic level of rules? Every session in my Tuesday week, or every session on my Tuesday and Wednesday games that Marc is part of, it doesn't look like he's in the chat with us today, but Marc, he knows all of the spells. And he knows most of the class abilities. When someone's like, oh, wait, can I do this do I have this ability? I, as the Dungeon Master, are like, oh, I actually did. Hold on, let me pull up your character sheet and check. And Marc's, he's not a rules lawyer, but he's definitely the one of like, it's this. You can do this, but you can't do that. Or the wording of it is this. And I'm like, dude, how do you know every rule for every spell in every class? That's insane. I only have a mastery of the basic rules. And I think I'm a great Dungeon Master. I'll give myself a tap on the back. I do think I'm a very good Dungeon Master. And I think it's in part due to the fact that I have at least a basic enough mastery of the rules that I can be flexible, right? So I think that's a very good response. I could see why it has the most upvotes. I'll give it one as well. Let's see what y'all are saying, though. I saw lots of messages from the Hermit Tower and Doman. Doman was saying, as a Dungeon Master, you usually read the most of the rules and watch a bit more YouTube videos than the majority of your players. I think it's your job to share the knowledge with your players. I agree, and I'm actually very curious. Do players watch D&D YouTube? It seems like so much of it is Dungeon Master focused. And I think part of that might be why in the past, like, my character idea videos are usually my best performing, because there's not a lot of... Well, that's not true. There's plenty of content out there. Here's my observation on player and GM audiences on YouTube, to get completely off the topic here, right? I think that the majority of content on YouTube that is targeted towards Dungeon Masters is tips, advice, how to run a session. Makes sense, right? Player-wise, though, I think the majority of the content made for them is, what's the most broken combo? What's like the craziest thing you can do with these abilities? Let's tier rank. What's the best feat and what's the worst feat? It's very power gamery focused, and I do not like it. I despise it. There are plenty of channels out there that I just will not watch, because I think that while what they're saying might be true, certainly is not beneficial for such a large audience of players to be hearing. I don't think. I think when the average player goes on YouTube and the videos they're getting is like, here's how to make something freaking broken and crazy, like, they're only going to show up to the table and either be disappointed, frustrated, or kicked out by the Dungeon Master, who's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? You cannot do that, right? I don't see as much of that now as I used to, but it's still out there. So I feel like kind of when I put up a video that's like, hey, here's just a cool character concept, and it's not about the rules, I don't share why it's so overpowered, I just share, like, here is a cool character I think you would enjoy role-playing. I think players enjoy that and resonate with it a bit. That's my random piece of insight there. The Hermit Tower said, indeed, I always tell new players only two people need to know the rules. Everyone else just describes what they want. Hold on. Only two person needs to know the rules. Oh, you must mean like the Dungeon Master and at least one other player. And the other players could all be new, and they don't need to know it. And it's fine, because you and the one veteran player know the rules. I think that's a kind of a good... Oh, you corrected it to one person. I was going to say, I'm like, I could see what you're saying, where at least one player needs to know the rules, but at the end of the day, the Dungeon Master really is the only one who needs to know the basic rules. But it is so helpful to have that veteran player, right? Doman had two other contributions here. He said, I think not having static initiative can be good and a bad thing. I would agree. There's strengths and weaknesses to it. I certainly don't want to... That's why I said I don't think one is better than the other inherently. And I don't think either are perfect. But you said, I don't know enough about Daggerheart to judge just yet, so I can't comment on that. What I'm trying to say is the quiet players will/could be even more overshadowed by high energy players than in static initiative order, where they are focused to have their moment. Okay, with what you are saying, on the surface level, do I agree with it? If you just go into a game where there isn't really strict initiative order and you kind of are all just talking amongst each other and sort of playing out this narrative in real time, does that mean that more often than not, probably the quieter players will get overshadowed by the more talkative players? All right, I can concede that point. But we're not playing in a vacuum. We're not playing... This scenario is being pitched as if it's like you sit down at a table and the dungeon master has no control over sort of balancing spotlights and has no way to shift spotlights and doesn't care that there are players who are not as talkative and just kind of ignores them. That's what I feel like is missing in that sort of argument, and what people in some of the other comments were saying. It's like, yeah, if you're a bad dungeon master and you let the spotlight hog the spotlight, then your quieter players will suffer. But if you are, I don't even want to say a great dungeon master, but if you're just a competent, good dungeon master, then you will be able to kind of notice and pick up on, like, okay, I've heard a lot from this player and this player, but I haven't really heard a lot from this one. Let's for a moment shift the spotlight to them, give them their moment, and then we can come back and the more energetic players can sort of continue to lead the group. As long as they are not keeping the other player from sharing any of their ideas, and they're not interrupting them or talking over them, then having some players who are more talkative and kind of pull the narrative with them, that can be good. That can be really, really good for a group. Because I think, at least I have a group or two where that doesn't really happen. And it is I am feeling the Dungeon Master fatigue lately, because I feel like I'm doing so much work to have to keep them going forward. And I wish some of the players would just be like, show up to the session, be like, here's the plan, here's what we're doing, here's what I think we should do. And instead, I think when you're so concerned about keeping everything so balanced between all the players, what can end up happening, at least what I'm finding in my experience, is a lot of the players, kind of all of them, start collectively looking at you. And you are now the person who is sort of hogging the narrative spotlight. That's just a little bit of my experience lately. Samael had some thoughts too, and then we'll kind of jump back in and see some more comments in the thread. But he said, about the initiative talks, personal rule, know your player. I had in party both over enthusiastic and who needed restraint, and shy passive players who needed incentive. So give them a finite rules or option. I'm a little confused what you're saying, but I get the point, where it's, yeah, it really just comes down to, as a game master, be observant of the different players at your table. Yeah. Samael also said, can level the field to give everyone a spotlight, then be flexible on the DM. I'm always right, not the core book, which is... But don't worry, I'm a benevolent dictator. My players suffer equally. That's a really good tip right there. Players should suffer equally. If one player is the brunt of most things, then that they're not going to have a lot of fun. That's a great little tip, Samuel. That's good. All right, let's move on, right? Let's get back into some other responses as to what makes a great dungeon master. The second most upvoted was reading the room. I'd argue that is single-handedly the most important skill. I'm curious to see the response to this. They said, I was going to say something similar. Someone capable of adapting the table. This includes players, story, amount of combat, or intrigue, and such in a campaign. If you can balance these three to a spot that makes everyone at the table have a good time, you're doing fantastic. Ooh, wow, they bring up a really good point. Because I feel like I do a pretty good job with this person's tip, being able to read the room. I can kind of tell, like, when enthusiasm is low and when a combat needs to get either higher stakes or lower stakes. I'm not perfect at it, but I feel like I'm at least aware enough of it sometimes to that it benefits my table. This person's comment, though, of so what did they say? They said Adapting the table. This includes players, story, amount of combat, or intrigue in such a campaign. That is definitely a weak spot in my DMing. When I am prepping my sessions, I have a really hard time confidently prepping anything that isn't a combat. So much of my prep is combat oriented, which is probably fine to a certain extent, and is like, combat is such a huge part of the game that, of course, it's going to be a lot of the prep. But I really struggle prepping intrigue. I struggle to prep things that sort of, if I had to put it in a specific way, I might say, I think I struggle when I'm prepping to trust that my players will be able to navigate the story or move themselves along if there isn't a combat kind of dangled in front of them, right? Political intrigue is tough for me to kind of imagine in my head and prep around, because it does rely on a lot of the skills that players and GMs maybe aren't as developed in. Anyone, after you've played a few sessions, can just work your way through combats. But getting into political intrigue or having that tense dinner negotiation with the Baron or whatever, like, that is harder for me to prep. And I'm not 100% sure why, but I do think something about the fact that I maybe don't trust my players, or maybe I don't trust myself. I don't have enough trust that I can handle that at the table with as much improv ability as I can at combat. Maybe that's what's sort of holding me back. Does anybody sort of feel the same? Have you kind of gone through similar experiences? I think Doman had another observation on initiative stuff. He said, of course it doesn't happen in a vacuum, but if the dungeon master needs to now balance the spotlight, that's one more thing the DM needs to worry about. It could definitely work out well, but as you said, you need to teach your players to behave. I've heard that a lot too, of this is something that the dungeon master needs to worry about. And people similar saying like, well, when you do initiative, you don't have to worry about the spotlight anymore. But I also don't know if that's necessarily true. Just because everybody takes their turn doesn't necessarily mean that you're having the most fun you could be having, or that everybody's getting the most out of the session. Because I've also caught myself in a few sessions where I like stick in this initiative order, and what happens is, like, what's a good example? Like, a combat has ended, and the party is sort of like in this room of the dungeon or whatever, and I start going around the table. What do you want to do? What do you want to do? What do you want to do? And of course, there's like, I'm going to loot the body. I'm going to investigate the room. I'm going to whatever. And what can happen is I can end up being like 3 rounds into an initiative order, and I'm like, why have we not left this room? Like, why are we still here? And it's like, because I'm so strict on everybody gets their turn, and all the players are just like, well, I'm just going to keep taking my turn until I guess someone tells me otherwise. There ends up being a little bit of like wheels spinning, as opposed to kind of letting the players decide together, like, what's everything you want to do in this room. And then when that's done, and everybody's like, one person might have had 3 things they wanted to do in this room, and one person might have only had 1. Once that's done, then they look to me and say, we're going to move to the next room. Or a player will be like, guys, let's go. What are we doing here? Let's go. And then that can get things moving a little bit quicker. So where was I going with this point? I think it was like initiative almost kind of feels like sort of giving the vibe of like a crutch. Like, well, I'm playing an initiative order. So everybody's getting their turn. Everybody's having fun. There are strengths to that. I know I'm coming across a little of like, I'm all in on the Daggerheart stuff and initiative's crazy. That's not my, that's not what I'm meaning to do. But I am really just trying to challenge the initiative mindset, because if you let go of the crutch of initiative, and what we're saying is a great dungeon master is flexible and sort of reads the room and is able to balance their players, then maybe the Daggerheart stuff isn't as hard as everybody's sort of making it out to be. I don't know if I buy this thing that people are saying of like, that just sounds like a nightmare. Like, I don't think it does. But anywho, other thoughts that were kind of coming in. Doman agreed. I am still struggling with political intrigue, but I found a way I can do it okay-ish. Oh, okay. Well, I would love to hear how you do that. Maybe this is your second message. You said, I also prep mostly just NPCs, quest hooks, and combat. Intrigue is super tricky and hard, and I still struggle with it to this day. I just do a mix of NPC goals that will not mix well with the... I'm guessing you're kind of typing up the next part of that. You mostly... I am so bad about prepping NPCs. That is my overly confident DM thing where I'm like, I can just make up a cool NPC in the moment. And to a certain degree I can, but like when it comes to coming up with a unique way that they speak, and I don't just mean of an accent or a funny voice, I mean like conveying their personality and making them feel very unique from all of the other NPCs that I do. I'm not great at that either. And I think it's because I'm overconfident about it. I'm like, I'll figure it out. If I need to introduce an NPC, I'll introduce an NPC. But then they kind of can just end up feeling a little bland in the moment. So maybe that's something I need to work into my prep more. Is if I want to be a great dungeon master, I need to I can't just be prioritizing combats in my prep. There's plenty of other things. And you know what? Maybe I need to... Do I have that book around here? Give me a sec. You know what? Hold on. Maybe I need to take another look, kind of refamiliarize myself with the Lazy Dungeon Master, because their prep template, I think, even has a section for NPCs, and I have not done a great job about doing that. Where is it? What are their steps? Preview the character. Oh, hold on. Okay, the Lazy Dungeon Master's checklist. Review the characters. I always do that, and that's been a great tip of mine, and that's one I'll share a little bit later, kind of go into detail on that, but prepping around the player characters. But review the characters. Create a strong start. Outline potential scenes. I tend to do most of those things, although most of my scenes are combat-oriented. Define secrets and clues. I do that, but I frame it more around the secrets and things that the characters will learn about themselves, as opposed to just like general secrets. Develop fantastic locations. I could probably improve in that area a bit, but I try that. Outline important NPCs. I never do that. Choose relevant monsters. That's kind of inherent as part of the scenes. And then select magic item rewards. I don't select mine ahead of time. I always just have my players roll on a D100 table. And that's been fun. I like doing that. I probably could be better, though, about having some like themed magic items or some homebrew magic items. But yeah, that's for sure an area where I could improve, is with these NPCs. What did Mr. Brady say? Or Brady? I feel like I'm simply... Let me read that again. I feel like I simply didn't consume any content like movies, books, etc. about political intrigue. So now I'm lacking the understanding, leading to me avoiding it and also not getting better. Whoa, that's a very good point. Yeah, so much of an individual's creative inspiration and their output is directly influenced by their inputs. So if you're not watching spy thrillers, or I can't even I'm in a similar boat as you, Mr. Brady. I literally can't even think of examples of the sort of stuff you would watch to get a good sense of what political intrigue looks like. So, I guess Arcane? Maybe that's a good example. I only watched the first season, and I didn't watch the second season, but maybe is that like a series that could kind of give you some ideas for political intrigue? To me, if I had to just take a gut stab at what I think political intrigue is all about, is putting problems in front of the players that cannot be solved with a combat. The corrupt mayor, the warmongering noble, the demon corrupted prince, or whatever. Like, you're introducing these characters to these plot threads that, like, could the players just go kill the baron? Could they just try and kill the prince? Sure, but if they do that, then they're going to be wanted fugitives, they're going to end up in the dungeon, they're going to create more problems than they solve. So that, to me, seems to be what political intrigue is all about. But when I try and maybe put that to the table, maybe it just feels like wheels spinning again, of like, are we making progress on this? Nobody's died. and that's maybe not the best mindset to have about it. Okay, coming back to Doman, though, who's talking about he preps NPCs, but intrigue is super tricky and stuff. He said, I just do a mix of NPC goals that will not mix well with the party and those choose your story games, or how they are called. Oh, wait, what about the choose your story games? I would watch the shit out of an intrigue prep, haha. There aren't many decent videos. Yeah. There aren't a lot of decent RPG videos in general, I would say. And I would include myself in that to a certain degree. Every day, I wake up and I'm thinking about, like, what do people want to hear right now? What do people, and I don't mean that in like a pandering sense of like, I'm just going to say whatever they want to hear. But I mean, like, what are people excited about right now? Because my strength is ideas. Just coming up with like cool, weird, crazy ideas and then trusting you guys to take them to your table. But I know that, like anything, if all I ever did was share ideas, that would get old. You can't have apple pie every single day, right? And so I'm like, well, what do other people want to watch? And it doesn't seem like there's a lot of like tips or advice channels or videos that like really pop off. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of actual plays that really pop off. I think it's kind of going back to what I've talked about on previous streams of like, we're just sort of in this like rut right now, this low point for D&D and RPGs. And I'm not sure what it will take to get people excited right now. And so I find myself second guessing or questioning the type of stuff I should talk about or put out in a video, because I'm like, is this just boring? Am I just boring people with what I'm saying? And that's part of why I like the streams, because at least I know the people who tune in for these like enjoy it and they like the discussion and they like to see like what I'm working on and what I'm actually doing. And a video can just kind of be hard to do sometimes. Couple more from Doman, and then we'll come back to Reddit. He said, I watched a bit of Dimension 20 Adventuring Party from their series A Crown of Candy, which was just Candyland mixed with Game of Thrones, and these Adventuring Party videos, the DM, Brennan Lee Mulligan, who? I've never heard of him. And he talks about how he, as the DM, viewed the political story unravel, and he gives insight there. Intrigue is hard. Yeah. And I don't think intrigue will ever be a dominant theme at the majority of tables ever, because it is hard, and because it's not as exciting as combat. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think combat should be like the most prominent thing in most sessions, because you're playing Dungeons and Dragons and you want to go fight things and use your cool abilities. But I need to watch some more of Adventure 20 or Dimension 20, because coming back to my own D&D assumptions, or these sort of like rigid little boxes I put myself in, I've always been I like my D&D to not be like overly serious, but grimdark, kind of dirty and scary and feel more like grounded in a sense. And when I hear something like A Crown of Candy, I'm kind of like, okay, like, all right, I don't know, how serious can that be, like, or how funny, how much can I enjoy watching something so silly? Maybe I just need to give it a shot. Maybe I'm just being a grouch, and I need to open myself up to things that I perceive as childish or kiddyish. See, maybe they're better than I thought they were, and I'll check them out. So, Doman, thanks for kind of opening my own eyes there. All right, let's come back to Reddit. Let's keep going. More tips for what makes a great dungeon master. Here we go. There are so many different kinds of great DMs that it's impossible to point to a single thing and say, that's the defining feature of greatness. Some DMs are great because they create intricate story-filled words. Oh my god. Intricate story-filled worlds for you to explore and discover. Some are great because they put a ton of effort into creating elaborate characters with their own voices and uniqueness. Some are great because they put immense amounts of effort into creating battle maps and terrain. Some are great because they listen to their players' dreams for their characters and build their plots around letting them explore these goals. And others are great because they're consistent and patient and willing to help someone new find their voice at the table and really embrace the hobby we all love. There's so many ways to be a great DM, and a big part of the fun of being the DM is figuring out which types of great you want to be and working towards it. Hearing the excitement in your players' voices and seeing it on their faces as you reveal a twist of the plot can be one of the most rewarding experiences possible. Wow. I feel like that, I like that response the most out of any we've read so far. They point out so many different areas where you can be a great dungeon master, and immediately what jumped into my mind was, Well, I feel this pressure to do all of these. I feel like in order to be a great dungeon master, I have to do every single one of these things. I have to have an intricate story-filled world. And I also have to convey these really elaborate NPCs. And at the same time, I need to find time in my week to prep crazy maps and terrain. I tried to do that for a while and ended up just dropping it. I was like, this is just too much work. I'm going to just draw it out, just sort of semi-theater of the mind style. But I feel guilty about it sometimes. Because then I also need to be prepping around my characters. And the intricate world that I try to create needs to also meld into their visions for their characters, right? Like, and it is very hard to feel like you can take a step back or go into a session and accept, like, you know what? Yeah, I don't have the coolest NPCs in the world, but I bring some awesome maps. And that's, you know what? Like, that's pretty cool that I do that. There's maybe I'm projecting here, but there's a lot more kind of not self-deprecating, because maybe, I guess I don't know what self-deprecating means except in the sense of like laughing, like making jokes about yourself, but there is more, I need to improve here and here and here, and less, well, I'm really good at that. Like, I enjoy this thing, and I'm going to kind of ignore the other stuff. We seem to all kind of get steered into the direction of, where can you be improved? Where can you be better? How do you be the best? And being the best is not the same thing as being great, right? So I love this comment. I wish that this had more upvotes, because I think it's fantastic. What do you guys think? Hey, what's up, Eric? Just what I needed today. My buddy started taking acting and improv classes because of the first campaign he was DMing. Oh, cool. I've never done... Well, that's not true, actually. My very first semester of college, I took an acting class, and I was not good. I was not good at all. But, yeah, I've never done, like, improv or anything, but that's cool that you've got a buddy who's that committed. That's awesome. Also, welcome, Eric. Good to see you, dude. Hope you're doing well. Let's see some other responses. What did this person say? Well, I have had a group of regulars grow from 9 to over 50 over a period of 45 years, with some others being DMs and such as well. Oh my god, they have 50 regular players? Is that what they're saying? That's insane. I wonder what do they mean by that? In my opinion, what makes a great DM is flexibility, an awareness that the story is always about the PCs, an awareness that the world and setting has to be about the players, knowing that they are one of the players and neither more important or less important than the others, communication and teamwork, broad knowledge base, understanding the rules are a guideline, being able to react to what players do in a way that fits with everything else, tracks their rulings and makes sure they are consistent, and has a lot of fun. Yeah, none of those really blow my mind or really get me amped like some of these other ones do. But this point that they make of the story is always about the PCs and the world and setting needs to be about the players. Yeah, that was one of my 4 tips. I said, so for what I do with my sessions that I think makes me a great dungeon master is I try and prep I call them revelations instead of secrets, but I try and prep a new revelation or a story beat for each character during that session. And that might mean that doesn't mean that they're all secrets that are revealed. I just like the word revelation. It's a fun one. It feels very fitting for the Church of Doom. But when I go into a session, I make sure that every player character has at least some sort of dream or vision they're going to have. There's an NPC they're going to meet that's very specific to them. And that could mean, if you've got, I have one player in a group of mine who loves this character named Roland. He's based off of Roland Shit from Schitt's Creek. But he's this bone farmer. Because aboard the Ark, there's very little soil to be found. And so a lot of congregations end up needing to, make their own sort of soil or things like that. And so Roland collects bones. He's got the bone cart, and he uses these bones and he breaks them all down and he grinds them into a dust and kind of uses that as a sort of fertilizer for his crops and stuff. Well, this character just sort of fell in love with this dude. He's like, I love this guy. I love his vibe. He's hilarious. And so whenever I see an opportunity to kind of, when I'm prepping my player notes, I'm like, oh, if he hasn't run into this character in a while, then maybe that'll just be my revelation for that character. He bumps into Roland and he has something new to share with him. He has a cool skull he wants to show him or something like that. So that's a way that I prep specific revelations for my characters. It might be like if right now in the campaign we're sort of pursuing one of the characters' like main threads or their backstory, sort of a villain that's tied into their character or something like that, then I will prep something that moves that story beat forward so that the player feels like they're making progress in defeating this bad guy or uncovering the secret of the cult that they fled or whatever, right? So there's all kinds of different ways to prep around your player characters. And I do think that that is absolutely one of the best things you can do to get your players to want to keep coming back. Because if your players don't feel like they're really getting, if their characters and their backstories and the things they're trying to bring to the table aren't getting engaged with and aren't being reciprocated through your prep, then I think that's a really easy way to have players sort of back out of a campaign or just be like, there's nothing really keeping me here besides like these random combats, right? Kenneth said, right now, oh no, busy cleaning the carpet. Dogs pooped on them. I enjoy listening to this. Hey, well, I'm glad to know that as I am speaking, someone out there is wiping up dog poop. Very, very fun little visual for me to have. Thanks, Kenneth. Oh, Eric, yeah, you were in that campaign. Yeah, you were part of that for a little while. That was so hilarious, collecting the bones from the bone, yeah, and selling them to the bone cart. Yeah, it was, yeah, see, Eric remembers it. Maybe my NPCs aren't that bad, right? Yeah, great list. I would agree. That was, it's very all-encompassing, but all good tips. Sort of, I think we've kind of seen most of these so far, though. Let's see if anybody says something new. What did I just cause to come up? There we go. I'm a DM, and I am pretty decent, at least I hope. I think it boils down to player agency and expectations matching. If you enjoy consequences and voice acting from your DM, and your DM is all about rule of cool and describing what happens, you are going to have a bad time. There are objectively bad DMs, but that's true. But many cases, it's just a mismatch of expectations. Mixed match of expectations. That's a very interesting point. Because we've all heard, when you have your session 0, it's like, establish expectations for the campaign. Admittedly, I'm not very good at that. I tend to go into my campaigns with the mindset of, whatever the players sort of pitch me or reveal as part of their backstories, I'm going to just lean into that and make that sort of the focal point of the campaign. And that is going to be what the campaign is about. I don't really think about, like, I have never thought to ask my players, do you like lots of character voices? Or, like, do you like rule of cool? Frankly, I kind of just am like, whatever I bring to the table, I'm going to do my best, and the players are going to they're either going to enjoy it or they're not. I do think I would struggle and probably would not have a lot of fun if I went into D&D with this mindset of, like, I need to change a lot about my own DMing style. This is not, and I'm saying this noting that it is different if it's like, you're just a jerk or you're a bad dungeon master. This is not that. But, like, if I'm confident, like, I am a decent, good dungeon master, I don't necessarily want to have to change a lot about the way that I do my prep or act at the table to meet my players' expectations of what they think D&D is, right? Like, if a player loves lots of voices, I'll try, but I think it's also sort of on the player to talk to the DM in their own voice and go and find opportunities to engage with NPCs and have those sort of conversations, because I might not think to do that as a dungeon master. It's just not one of my priorities in a session of, like, I'm going to have my NPCs just kind of come up to the players all the time and talk in their crazy way. But if a player came to me and wanted to talk to an NPC, I would certainly get more boisterous and have my crazy fun NPCs to engage with. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with the point they're trying to make here. But the insight that I found through rambling through that is, yeah, like, if you're a player who likes certain things at the game, you better be willing to sort of go to take the actions in the game you need to help make those come to life. If you just show up at the table, you're like, all right, DM, you heard me. I like crazy voices and political intrigue. Entertain me. Like, come on. That's ridiculous. Like, it's not all on your dungeon master, right? Ooh, Eric's got a question. What are your thoughts on having a player change their character? My paladin of devotion in my campaign broke their oath and made a deal with a demon. Oathbreaker conversion? Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I would certainly not say no. What I might say, only for like simplicity's sake, is like, do you need to do a whole class change, or can there just be like some reflavoring of a couple of certain abilities, and maybe more of this is reflected through your role play? I think it can be easy to, like, if you, what am I trying to say here? I think we've all heard this idea of like, I wish characters would do more than what's on their character sheet, right? Or I wish players would do more than what's on their character sheet, or not feel limited by what's on their character sheet. And what you just asked, Eric, is not, now I'm not saying that that's exactly what you're doing, but it has hints of that, of like, well, I can't play my character now as an Oathbreaker unless I take the Oathbreaker class. And I would say, I don't know if that's true. I think it can be fun, and there can certainly, like, there's no reason maybe not to, but I also would say you don't have to. There's plenty of ways to play your Vengeance Paladin as an Oathbreaker and just use the abilities you've got. But to each your own, right? Doman said, every DM has their strengths. Usually it's the thing they are most excited about. Combats, NPCs, world building, intrigue, etc. I think that if you sit down with your players and talk about the type of... We'll get the second half of their message here in a moment. Jack Stanton, the poet, said, the bare minimum for me is a DM that doesn't see their player's presence as antagonistic to the story they are running. The whole table should be on the same page, wanting to see how the story plays out. Wow, that's, yeah. DM who doesn't see their player's presence as antagonistic. Oh, such a good point. There are and always will be dungeon masters who think that making life not miserable, but making life difficult for their players is what makes it is what's so fun, or what makes them great. Now, you can certainly challenge your players, and you should challenge your players every single session, but I see just so many responses or stories about dungeon masters who it's like, just like undermining their players and their goals and setting them back and sabotaging them and betraying them with NPCs and throwing impossible enemies at them. And they think that that's like, A, they think that that's fun for the players, and B, they think it makes them like, look how good I am. My players just, man, I make them work so hard, and gosh, like, in a year, maybe they'll get to the point they want to be at. And this person hits it right on the head. It's like, nope. If that is your approach, you are a bad dungeon master. You are the furthest thing from a great one. I completely agree with Jack Stanton there. Doman finished up his thought saying, I think if you sit down with your players and talk about the type of campaign you're going to run, I think the DM can and should lean into their strengths and still be considered a good DM. Yep, completely agree. Oh, what's up, G. Joel Moore? Welcome in. I'm here. Silly work getting in the way. Silly work. Ridiculous. Here, let's go up to the top. I want to kind of just see what some of the newest responses are. Just curious. There's new. Okay. Newest response was 6 hours ago from Weird Weekend 1839. Remember that you are all playing a game, and the purpose is to have fun. In this game, you all win when everyone has fun, and you will all lose in time if someone really isn't, or if any real sort of competitive nature begins to ferment at the table. That is, yeah, thankfully, I have not had that at my table in a while, of like players competing with each other. I actually, in none of my campaigns that I've run, and even a lot of the one-shots I've done in the past, yeah, I have not experienced that, thankfully. But I have had it in the past, and I know how frustrating it can be. Understanding different expectations and making sure everyone, including you as the DM, is getting what they want out of this, which may involve compromises, is very important. Length of sessions, amount of combat and roleplay. Personally, a session with no combat encounters feels disappointing to me, but not everyone loves combat. Player agency is very important. Make sure that you let them try and be heroes, but don't hold their hand or railroad them, and never force their actions. I had a DM be very adamant that I needed to roll a d20 to step over a bear trap I just set in the entryway to a field
tent. And as much as I protested by saying, I'm trained in trapping, it's my trap, I'm 100% not in any risk, I can just lunge over it. The response was, well, there's always a chance you make a mistake. Oh, that's so fucking stupid. Oh my gosh. Okay. I am definitely a DM who likes to call for rolls often. I think it's fun. I think it's an opportunity for players to sort of demonstrate their skills and but there is that risk of failure. But like, I am not this obnoxious about it. Like, if there is a situation where the player wants to do something and there's absolutely no risk and it's something they're good at, then the only reason I might have them roll is not to see like if they get hurt or if it goes terribly wrong, but to see if there's an opportunity for maybe me to introduce a complication. Like, this is kind of in this instance, what they're talking about of setting a trap and then wanting to get into your tent. No, I would never ask my player to make a save to avoid the trap. The only check I might do is like, give me a check to see how well you conceal this trap. Because if something shows up to, like, let's say in my mind, I'm like, well, assassins are following the characters and they want to set these traps out to try and keep the assassins from getting into their tent. Random example. Then yeah, I might have them make a check to see how well they hide the traps, because the assassins might see them before they show up. But no, I'm not going to have a ranger make a save against their own trap. That would be so stupid. The last thing they said, though, is I felt they just thought it would be funny to see me hit my own trap with a nat 1. They reduced my PC to a complete moron who was a 1 out of 20 chance to hit his own hunting trap, when in fact he grew up in the wild living off hunting, trapping, and foraging. Nothing makes players disengage quicker than the feeling that their PC isn't in control by them. Amen to that. Amen to that. If your players feel like you're running their PCs for them, or like out to make them look stupid, or out to get them in trouble or get them hurt, then you're going to lose trust at the table for sure. Yeah, that's a good observation. Let's see. What was Doman also said? Being a jack of all trades as a DM is never bad, but depends on what kind of D&D you and your players want to play. Yeah, does anybody play like hyper specific games? Because the jack of all trades thing, I guess maybe that's just like my D&D table. Like, I feel like it's pretty jack of all trades. Like, there's plenty of combat, but we're not a combat only sort of table. There is lots of roleplay, and they meet interesting NPCs, and they explore the world, and there's a sandbox, and there's all that sort of stuff. But I wonder if there's certainly got to be strengths to being like, this is the vibe of the campaign. This is the one thing we're going to really hammer and lean into, as opposed to maybe more of a jack of all trades thing, right? That's a good response. What makes a great dungeon master? Applying the great template to the DM base creature. That's hilarious. Oh, that's too good. Let's give him a little lol. That's funny. Nathan Drott said, I'm not sure I'm a great DM, but I found I do my best when my goal is to show my friends a good time. I try to write a decent story, I try to make engaging battle maps, I try to have fun and interesting characters to interact with, but all of that I do to show my players a good time. I'll never forget when I had a custom battle map I had made and printed at a print shop for like $17 for my first session as a DM, and all my friends lit up and cheered when I pulled that out. It was a really good time and a great first session. Ah, cool. I remember some of those early experiences too, of busting out my first like big custom laminated map or whatever, my dry erase board that I made, and the players were like, oh, that's so cool, I can't believe you found the time to make that. It does feel good. Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, oh, what I would give to go back and re-experience D&D for the first time, right? Damn. I think I'm going to agree with this person, Straw Hat Dad. The golden rule is the rule of cool. Just make sure everyone is enjoying themselves and try not to put anything onto a character that would be massively disappointing to the player. I've seen some players lose motivation and excitement due to DMs altering backstories or pushing a certain motive or narrative without first speaking to the said player. For example, I'm currently DMing my first campaign, and the Path of the Beast Barbarian fittingly failed a con check and became a were-rat. I thought the were-rat stat block was fairly underwhelming, especially so for the Path of the Beast Barbarian. So I spoke to the player and told him I want to homebrew something with a more risk-reward aspect to it, and he was totally cool with it, and we worked together to build it into his backstory. He was really happy with it and got the spotlight last session as he underwent his first transformation. Asked me to control the beast for this time, and ultimately the session ended on a TPK due to the were-rat transformation and a very untimely wild magic fireball. Wow, cool. Hell yeah, Straw Hat Dad. That sounds like a fun session. Your first time transforming into a were-rat, and you kill the rest of the party. And it sounds like they all had fun. That sounds like a session I would enjoy in, or I would have a lot of fun in. Getting killed by one of my own party members who was a were-rat. Ooh, brutal ending. Very cool. Well, we're at like an hour. And I wanted to kind of keep today's stream a little short. There's lots of other things I'm sort of working on right now. I've got to get this Retrotropic zine finished and ready to be published on Sunday. There's a lot to do with that. I've got a session tonight. Just lots of other things kind of going on right now. So I think that's where we're going to call it. Real quick, though, let's make sure I hit my tip. So I think a great Dungeon Master or Game Master preps a new revelation for each PC every session. We already talked about that. I said that they bring the player's fantasies to life with their descriptions. If you've got a character who's like, I'm an acid-themed alchemist, and when they're doing their abilities, you are not either A, giving them the opportunity to describe it, but also at the same time, you like doubling down and adding on to their descriptions and just really leaning into all the different cool ways you could describe the enemies melting, the like, what's a good example? Oh, like I had a wizard who cast Melf's Acid Arrow last session. Now they're not a wizard theme or an acid themed wizard, but they've used this spell a lot, and they nat 20'd on this big raven monster thing that was attacking one of the other characters. So they had their fun description of the acid like eating its way into the back of this creature's chest and kind of appearing on the front side, and I added it into the description of the barbarian was sort of up another level fighting this thing, and I described as it was screeching and squawking, like just as it was about to lunge at him, it kind of like made this weird sound, like a gurgling sound, and the barbarian looked down and could see the wizard through the hole in this thing's chest that had melted away. That's like one of my favorite things to do as a dungeon master, is take advantage of every moment I can find to add onto the descriptions my players are kind of building for me to make their character look and feel like what they've sort of envisioned them to be. I also had a third tip that I haven't really seen on here yet, but give your players the benefit of the doubt. If you've got and this is not a new tip, it falls into that category of like, if a player forgets to do something, or if the player forgets something that their character would obviously remember or know to do, then yeah, like lean into that, give them the benefit of the doubt, trust that they're not trying to ruin your game by forgetting to do something, right? And so be on their side. You're not an adversary. That's been mentioned in this thread. You're not an adversary. You're on the same team. So be lenient. Let them get away with things, and I think you'll have happier players. And then the last one we already talked about. Be the dorkiest, most enthusiastic person at the table. Those are my 4 tips for what makes a great dungeon master. And thank you all for sharing your own ideas here in the chat today. We had a really lively chat there for our first hour. I appreciate it. And that's it. That's kind of all I wanted to do today with you guys. So I'll see you tomorrow. Come back tomorrow because we're going to do our bonus stream we unlocked with that super chat goal. We'll prep a one-shot and it'll get published and everybody can take it and run it in whatever system you want to run. So I'm excited for that tomorrow. See y'all then. We say these things in your unholy names. Amen. See y'all.